Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to Politics Done Right. From the studios of KPFT 90.1 FM Houston, your community radio station, we have a great program for you today. As you all know, we are in the winter 2022 fund drive. But folks, stick with me. I'm not just going to give you fund drive. I'm not just going to be doing a whole bunch of pitching. I'm going to do it here at the beginning. I'm going to do a slight little bit in the middle and then at the end. And it's all going to total under 5 minutes. Today, we're going to be talking to L.A. Justice. She is going to have some commentary on the 1619 project and on voting, most importantly, voting. Guys, you've got to stick around for this because this is somebody that said, I hadn't voted in decades, but finally, I am going to be voting now. You just have to listen to this one. And the other subject we're going to talk about the dollar. Is the dollar real? We're going to talk about debt. We're going to talk about a whole lot of stuff in this program as we pitch as well. But we have a lot of content for you folks. So stick around for the whole show. And don't forget, support the show as well. Support the station as well. Why is it that I am asking you to support KPFT 90.1 FM? It is extremely important. I mean, remember, KPFT embraces cultural diversity. So we represent the entire Houston. We represent the entire metropolitan area. We represent the entire country. KPFT, we support programming that's not the status quo. We challenge the status quo. We don't give you what the corporatocracy just wants to give you. We are here to tell you not only the truth, but to express it in a manner that we all understand. That's what KPFT does for you. We are not trying to forget the past. We embrace the past, and we are there to celebrate the future because things change. So what I'm saying, please remember, KPFT 90.1 FM is a gem. We are in the process of moving. We're in the process of relocating to a new space. We need you more than we ever needed you before to keep this thing going. Over 50 years of giving you great info, not only progressive data, not only progressive programming, but programming, alternative programming. And sometimes you say alternative programming and people say, what do you mean by alternative programming? We mean things that you're not going to get elsewhere. We also mean telling you the truth about things that others may not want you to know. So please remember, folks, call 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. But preferably, so we get it automatically, go to kpft.org. kpft.org. Please remember to select the option that you want. Make sure you select Politics Done Right. And we have a whole lot of choices for you. Remember that you can get one of my several books out there. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, for a contribution of $120. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors for a contribution of $120. How to make America utopia. Take away the economy from those who rigged it. Pledge of $120. You can get any two of those books for $200, any three of those books for $250. That is to support our station. Alternatively, folks, you can get a KPFT membership for $40, but also remember, just go to kpft.org and select an option, either our books or something else. Support the station. It is worth it. Politics Done Right, Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/Politics Done Right. On YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please do not forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My handle is at Egberto Willies, at EGBERTO Before you get started, please remember to keep your community radio station in your minds, KPFT in your minds. Talk about it. Tell your friends about it. Tell them you know about this station in town, 90.1 FM Houston, that needs your support, that is there to provide that nourishment that we need. 713-526-5738. KPFT.org. Visit us online. Contribute online. KPFT 90.1 FM. You can visit us at kpft.org. Let's see. Eric Hayes says progressive turns away because of end results of radical policies changing. For example, San Francisco into a dump. So what do we call the whole state of Alabama? So what do we call the whole state of Mississippi? So what do we call the whole state of... Don't let me continue, because I love my Mississippi brothers and my Alabama brothers. But unfortunately, those bigger states, those Republicans have turned them into bigger states where people die, where people at much larger amounts than in any blue part of this country. So yes, there's a mess in San Francisco, mostly because of capitalism. What has the undue rise in prices of homes and prices of real estate done to the average person who cannot possibly afford that? Drive them into the streets to live on the streets. In that we agree. And Eric Hayes, on things like that, we should agree. The type of capitalism we practice, San Francisco is a bastion of it. And guess what? Nancy Pelosi is one of the biggest capitalists there is. She says it. When they said, Nancy, are you going to pass the law to stop having Congress people who actually make decisions that can affect stock prices, stop investing in the stock market? Nancy says, oh, I am a capitalist. We're capitalists. She's happy. Look, I like Nancy. She's a strong woman, and she comes out with the necessary progressive policies. So I'll give her a pass on her nature of allowing these folks to invest. But her nature on strong devotion to capitalism, hey, San Francisco is the bastion of capitalism, from the e-stocks to all of that. Everything. That is capitalism on steroids is what you get in San Francisco. So whereas, Mr. Hayes, you would like us to say, oh, that is social policies that created the malaise in San Francisco, I'll tell you, no, sir. What you are seeing is capitalism on steroids, my brother. So thank you for bringing that up so that I could actually explain it, sir. I do appreciate your input into our program. We just couldn't do it without people like you, sir, my brother. We'll have coffee when I get back to Houston. Here's a message for my Texas Democrats, and to put it bluntly, Democrats all over this country. You know, I received a call from my wife that says, it's the wild, wild west here in Harris County, Texas. We just have police get shot up by guns, etc., etc., etc. And of course, we know the violence by guns, it's getting worse around the country, etc. Now, Democrats are concerned about whether they'll hold the House, whether they will win state senates, whether they will do all these things. But we know that Democrats and progressives have the values that people want. But the one thing that happens is that people don't know. People don't understand who is really fighting for them. So I have a question to Democrats. With all these things being shown today that let us know, that informs us that the policies that we want work, and the policies are proven not to work in the red states, etc. Why are we so silent? Why are we raising hell about the violence that is occurring with guns? With all these guns here in Texas, you just go get a gun. You don't even need a license. Why aren't we talking about all these sick people that, in as much as we have the money, the federal government wants to give Texas the money to get the people healed? Why aren't we raising hell on every single network to say, hey, the Republicans are killing you. Your Republican representatives are killing you. Where are those ads? Why aren't we fighting with the passion, telling the American people, telling Texans, we want to do what's right by you? You know, the other side, those who are on the right, they love to say or call progressives and liberals snowflakes. You know, one has to wonder if they're not calling us snowflakes because they are concerned about everything hurting us, but snowflakes because we refuse to engage the way we should. They lie about what they do. All we have to do is tell the truth, and telling the truth will win the vote if we do it. Why aren't we? Eric Hayes says, Egberto, but don't you want us, as does China, to do things on credit? Isn't this the policy being pushed now? Give free stuff? Mortgage the future of our kids and future generations? Remember, there is always a cost to someone giving free stuff away. Somebody who absolutely does not understand economics. Let's first get a few things straight. The dollar means nothing, okay? The sole definition of a dollar is a faith that anybody who wants to buy something with a dollar has in it. Nothing more. That piece of paper means absolutely nothing. And for those who say, well, it should have had gold behind it. Can you eat gold? What can you do with gold? All this imaginary crap that we've been taught to learn is ridiculous. Oh, I can pay for something in gold. Gold is just a placeholder, right? A placeholder for a trade. In other words, if I have cotton and you have a cotton gin, you don't want my cotton. You want me to buy your gin so that you can go ahead and buy aluminum and metal. So you don't do all of that at the same time. Trading, what they call bartering, is difficult because if you are going to barter, it means everybody has to have the exact product they need at that particular time. But so gold was a stand-in, all right? In other words, I have a piece of gold. If we assert some value for that gold, and I say, okay, I want that bale of cotton. You give me 50 pieces of gold. I give you the cotton gin. And then I take that piece of gold and I go to that guy who sell the metal, who going to allow me to build some more cotton gins. All right, guys. Here's a metal to give me the cotton gin. And then that guy who did the metal goes ahead and he buys the coke and all that stuff that is necessary to make the steel that I bought from him, etc. That's why you have something as a placeholder. All right? Money is nothing but a placeholder. Nothing but a placeholder. People say, well, gold is scarce. There are a lot of things that are scarce, but you can't eat it. If something happens in this world where we have to self-sustain, corn can become the latest gold because everybody can actually do something with corn. Everybody needs to eat. But gold? So when I hear all these right-wingers ripping their people off by saying, get gold, gold has value, get gold, I laugh. I don't want gold. A piece of paper is no different than a piece of gold, because the value of that piece of paper is backed by America. If that piece of gold is not backed by some country who is willing to fight for it, it means nothing. It has no value. And that is what they haven't taught Americans. It's like diamonds, right? Oh, diamonds are so expensive. We got the bears in South Africa controlling how much they throw on the market. How valuable can something is if you have one company, one guy controlling how much you put on the market, supposedly to adjust prices? Capitalism is it's a thievery thing, folks. You have to understand how it works to understand that it's a smoke and mirrors. And when you understand it in the reality, you're like, how could we have fallen for this stuff? So when it comes to we are barter and we are mortgaging, I have used that term before as well, but it's wrong. We're not mortgaging anybody's future. All that money that we have in bonds never have to be paid ever. It is a placeholder for an economic system. Eric Hayes says China is in Africa, and when the debt is not paid, they take it over. That is how they are conquering the world. You know something, Eric Hayes? You are correct. China is filling a lot of these countries up with easy money, just like our corporations do to the American people and to our government. Let's explain. Right now, Americans used to, as productivity increased, after we got the unions involved and after we got everybody to show that they were stakeholders, what happened? Salaries started to go up, wages started to go up. As productivity went up, so did wages. But Milton Friedman, the new master of capitalism, said, oh, no. Your job, corporations, are to do whatever is necessary to maximize the profit for the shareholder. And of course, with that, your big ass bonuses. Okay, cool. What that meant is strangling the worker again. But we also wanted growth. We wanted to have more products sold, etc. If we're not paying them, remember, Ford said back in the early days, the reason he paid a living wage is so that the people who worked could afford to buy the car he sells. Well, that was magnanimous. He wasn't being nice. He was just being practical, and that still applies today. But the capitalists learned something else. They learned something called paper, manipulation of financial instruments. So we don't go ahead and give people any more money, no more. We don't increase your wages. It's been stagnant except for this last year under Biden. Under Biden is the first time we've had substantial increase in wages for Americans. And people say, oh, it started under Trump. No, it didn't. What started under Trump was really remodelation. Okay, but let's wait for a minute on that. Here's what happened. They said, you know what? There is another way for we to have our peons buy more stuff to make us more rich. So how do we do it? The magic is called credit. So how? And there's a great piece called, you look it up on my website, Capitalism Hit the Fan by economist Richard Wolff. And I've interviewed him several times, both in person and here on the show. And what they did is as follows. All right, we're going to keep those wages stagnant, but we are going to make credit very, very easy. So you want to buy a house? Go buy a house. No problem. We know you're going to pay for it because you work. You want to buy a car? Go buy a car. In the past, you used to have to put 30-40% down on your home. Nothing. Nada. We even have a 10-10-20 or a 10-10-80. 10-10-80, we put down 10%. We loan you 10% on a high interest loan, and then we give you a mortgage for the other 80%. All kinds of deals it created to let you borrow more money. What happens when you borrow more money? You pay on that home as much as you can, and you try to pay the mortgage, and you put all your money into that home. But when you hit the fan, when the pandemic comes, when the explosion of the bonds that these capitalists put out that falls on their case, when that occurs, you lose your home, right? So they get to keep all the monies that you paid on the home before, and then they sell the home. And what's interesting about that is whatever they lose on the home, you then have to pay in taxes. Folks, if you don't understand the corruption that is our economic system. So when Brother Hayes talks about, oh, China is going to Africa and giving them loans and going to all these countries and giving them loans to build roads and all of that. China had the best teacher. It's called America. We don't only do that to countries. We didn't only do that to Costa Rica. We didn't only do that to Panama. We didn't only do that to Saudi Arabia. We didn't only do that to all these other countries. We did it to our own. I don't know if China has started doing it to its own yet, but there's something that I always talk about, and it goes as follows. And it goes like this. You know when you're reaching the end of a system, when you have to eat your own. When, America has always been the land of immigrants, right? And immigrants and the POCs, those were the people that you could take advantage of, extract more from them, still keep your society, because enough of your society is doing well. But here's the kicker. You run out of people to screw. You eventually run out of all them immigrants. And especially when you have a policy that says you don't want more immigrants, you run out of all these people that you can take advantage of. And then you have to start taking advantage of your own, which is where we're at now. So what has happened? My white brothers and sisters who for a long time in the aggregate, I'm not talking absolute, I'm talking in the aggregate, has done better than everybody else because of the nature of our economy. Now that capitalism needs to eat more people, and they've eaten all they could from the others in the aggregate. I mean, there's still an Oprah, there's still a Bill, there's still an Oprah and a few others, right? But that is the thing that is just the exception. In the aggregate, it's still there. It has to eat more people to survive. Where else are we going to get 7% growth in an economy that grows at 2 to 3%? I'm talking over time. You have to take it from somebody. And eventually, the laws of math work. You run out of people to take it from. And our good white brothers and sisters are finally in the firing line along with everybody else. And that is why I said there is a natural alliance to be had against the plutocracy. I always talk about it. And I said, whenever we unite the ghettos, the barrios, and Appalachia, that's a stereotype. But when we get all these peoples together, everybody, the different factionalizations that the plutocracy created, then we can beat them all. Okay, I'm back with this brief interruption, but folks, we're getting right back into programming because, coming up next is LA Justice, why we must vote, why the 1619 project makes sense, a whole lot of stuff to cover, to continue covering, folks. But remember, why is it that you want to support KPFT, the 90.1 FM Houston? It's important. We embrace cultural diversity. We embrace it. We support it. Why else would you want to support KPFT? Because we are giving you challenging programming. We are not staying with the status quo. We are ensuring that you hear the things that we all need to hear. And lastly, but not least, we don't only embrace the past, we also empower, celebrate the future because we know where we're going. So folks, please give us a call, 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Or best way, go to kpft.org, kpft.org. And what do we have to offer? We do need your support. How can you support us? Just go to kpft.org. There are myriads of gifts for you to choose from. But of course, I am a bit prejudiced against what I would like you to be opt-in to, and that is that you can get one of my several books out there. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, for a contribution of $120. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors for a contribution of $120. How to make America utopia. Take away the economy from those who rigged it. Pledge of $120. You can get any two of those books for $200, any three of those books for $250. That is to support our station. Alternatively, folks, you can get a KPFT membership for $40, but also remember, just go to kpft.org and select an option, either our books or something else. Support the station. It is worth it. We are honored to have LA Justice with us. She is a scholar, someone that I'm learning a hell of a lot from as she examines the 1619 Project book with quite a few people on Twitter Space. Welcome to Politics Done Right, L.A. Justice. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am doing just fine. But anyhow, L.A., before we get into, and by the way, I know she's known all over the internet as L.A. Justice, so look her up.
Yes.
Anyway, before we get into 1619 or anything like that, one of the things that really made me want to talk to you was something prescient that you said, something very important. You have a 1619 Project Twitter space where you get hundreds of people that participate into this thing and they learn, they read the book together, etc. But that wasn't what really got me initially. I learned a lot from it, but you mentioned I never used to necessarily go vote because I thought withholding my vote was some sort of a protest. I've heard that a lot.
Yes.
And then you said, but I figured out that my non-vote was actually a vote. First of all, explain to me your initial, what you thought initially.
I believed what has been said so many times about our vote not counting. And I have voted previously. I 3 times in my entire life, I have voted. I voted in my 20s. And I'm just going to be honest, I did not know what I was doing. I thought I was going in to vote for, I think I was voting for mayor at the time. But then there are all these other amendments and and all these other things that I had to vote for that I knew nothing about. And so back then, I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So I just checked off anything. And I felt so horrible about it that I didn't look into how to do it better. And then I just started really to believe in what other people say about our votes not counting, about which part of this is true, about billionaires actually being the ones that run this country. Corporations and billionaires do lobby, with politicians. So there's a lot of truth in that. However, it doesn't mean that our votes don't count and that our votes don't make a difference. And that's the piece that I was missing. So when I did vote again, so I'm 54. So the first time I voted was in my 20s. The second time I voted was when I was 52, 2 years ago. And 4 years ago, 2018. And then in 2020, I voted against Trump. But voting against Trump was my first presidential election. When I voted in 2018, that was a midterm election. So, I mentioned to someone I didn't even vote for Obama, and they were just shocked. And I was like, yeah, I didn't think it would make a difference.
Now, interesting, LA. First of all, there are millions, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands. There are millions of POCs, people of color. There are millions of our white brothers and sisters in Appalachia. There are millions of people that think just that way because that is how they were designed to think, right?
Right.
And that is what gives the billionaires the power that they have. They still only have one vote.
Right.
One vote. But that's what gives them the power, right? And the hardest thing to do, and that's why I thought what you said, I don't know if you saw the importance of what you said on that space because immediately it got my attention, and it was clear that it got the attention of others. It was like, wow. And then if somebody who hadn't voted like you really saw the urgency, it shows how important it was. But let me give you a few numbers that I thought was interesting.
Okay.
Donald Trump, when he lost in 2020, garnered more votes than Hillary's win in 2016. And notice I said Hillary's win in 2016 because she had a popular vote of over 3 million people. Yep. Think about this. If Democrats, and I'm actually a progressive left-wing, well, I won't even go there, type of progressive, okay?
Right.
If we had not done the job, Trump would have won not only the electoral college, but the popular vote if we simply wanted to make Hillary's number. But there's one thing we knew, that there were a lot of LA justices out there, intelligent people who want to vote, who never did vote. And we brought them out.
Right.
And the thing is, we have to do that over and over again. And if we do that over and over again with the policies that we want, that is when change is going to occur.
Right.
But
listen, it's when people believe something, and let me take a step back. There are two things that we are always told you don't talk to people about: politics and religion.
Right.
Right. So when I'm a Christian, I went to seminary, I have a master's in theology. So I'm a theologian, as well as, the other things I do. There is nothing that anyone can say to me to convince me that God does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
In the same vein, there was nothing anyone could say to convince me that my vote mattered. But politics is not religion. Voting doesn't equate to my belief in God. So I had to do some serious thought. I had to give serious thought to it. I had to dig deep. I've had conversations with friends. People unfriended me, and I mean personal friends unfriended me on Facebook. I've had people have tried to convince me. There was nothing anybody could say to convince me. And I remember a professor saying one day that not voting was actually a political position. She said being apolitical is a political position. And I was like, exactly. Somebody gets it. And so that made my conviction even stronger, because I was like, that's what I am. I am apolitical, and I will always be apolitical. But the honest truth is that having Trump in office for 4 years is what made me change my mind. And not just having Trump. So I can't say it's all his fault. Most of it is. But it's actually seeing the constant oppression, all these cases of police brutality, everything that has gone on in this country against Black and brown people. When I went to seminary, it was during the time that Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and that group got killed. Tamir Rice. God, Tamir Rice is was the same age as my youngest daughter. My daughter was 12 too. That killed me, and it sparked something in me. And I became an activist in seminary. And so as I started speaking out more and more about social justice, I would always shy away from politics. I wouldn't say anything about it. When I did my master's thesis, my professor forced me to talk about politics. I didn't want to. And he was like, Linda, why would you not want to talk about it? You're a Black woman in this country. He's Black as well. But he was like, you have to talk about it. And so I talked a little bit about it, but I also felt inadequate to speak about it. And so when Trump came into office, I became more vocal because I knew I had to say something. As an activist, I could no longer remain silent. So as I started speaking out more and more, and as my voice got stronger, and as I started learning more, and then when he was up for re-election in 2020, I said to myself, you know what? I would rather vote and find out later that my vote didn't count than not to vote and find out later I could have made a difference and it actually did count. And that's what made me vote.
That is magic. Let me tell you something that I learned. Okay. I had this show, Politics and Right, that you're on right now. It's about empowering people, right? I call it the people's show. The people own the show. They are the ones that we come here, we learn together. Yes, I'm the one verbalizing everything, but I also learn from my audience as well. Okay. And the one thing about it is you just spoke about it. You just said, I felt inadequate politically, as if I didn't know things politically. And I always put a stop to my audience when they say that, right? And I always tell them, you are living, you have lived, and society impacts you. That's politics. Yes. You may not know something about that ordinance. You may not know anything about these things here.
Exactly.
But you have a voice, and you must always use your voice. Now, it is one thing that, and for the followers that I have, the ones that are there all of the time, that is what they love, right? It's like, finally, I'm empowered, not only because I'm learning other things, but because I see the reason that I should actually be a part of the body politic.
Right.
Now, the other magical thing that you said just now is you're in seminary school, you got your theology master's. There's absolutely nothing I could have told you when you were in a mode not ready to receive.
Right.
Okay. There's nothing I was going to, I could have said, hey, LA, you need to vote because there was not the platform there within your mind for me to land that message, it wasn't going to get there. So I wrote a book called It's Worth It: How to Speak to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. And the reason I did that in the different pieces and the different guts of that book was that idea, right? Mm-hmm. I tell stories of things, right, with the expectation that people are not going to say, oh, I've seen the light.
Right.
Nobody says that. I don't know who says that. Anybody that I talk to, they tell me, oh, I've seen the light. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to change tomorrow when John Peter tells them to see the light.
Right.
I don't want to convince somebody like that. I want them to convince themselves. And what I just heard from you. What I just heard from you is you said there's nothing anybody could say. The professor forced you to write about politics. That didn't matter. But then you would have preferred to vote not knowing than to vote and realize that if you had voted, you would have made a difference. And that 8 million differential proves that that's exactly what happened.
Yep. And let me tell you, it's funny that you grabbed onto that, because even when I was in seminary, I went in there with different beliefs and came out a completely changed person. So I've changed both religiously and politically. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get into a religious conversation, but this is just who I am.
Right.
I went in with very conservative religious beliefs, mm-hmm. like a lot of Christians have. I had a professor and the same professor, and I love him to death. I used to argue with him in class because what he was teaching went up against my beliefs. So it's very similar. And again, I had to dig deep to understand my purpose for going to seminary, but to understand what he was teaching, because the seminary I went to taught theology from a social justice perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was something, I never heard of. Christians fighting for social justice, really?
Mm-hmm.
And so it took a
Reverend Barber.
lot. What was that?
Reverend Barber.
Yes, absolutely. He actually went to Drew. That's where I went to his alma mater.
Okay, great.
So yes. So yes. So he, my professor, he was very patient with me. And then one day I was just like, I just heard, Linda, just close your mouth sometimes. He didn't say this. This is, me in deep prayer. Just close your mouth. And so I was like, oh, all right, maybe if I just close my mouth and stop arguing and really try to understand the perspective that he's coming from, maybe I'll see things differently. And I did. And that's what turned me into an activist. And it's, for that same reason that I am now a voter, because I just wanted to understand, what is the big deal about voting? Well, Trump taught me what the big deal is about voting. And so, and not only that, even after voting, what I have done and have been doing all along, but it's come full circle now, is while in seminary and becoming this Black liberation theologian, I had to learn about my own history. And I did that because of seminary, because my original background is science. I have a bachelor's in biology, a master's in biochemistry. I was only focused on science. That's part of why I wasn't worried about anything else. Hate to say it, but I thought I knew enough about my own Black history. I was learning things from white professors that I didn't know about myself, my own history. And I was like, oh no, that is not going to happen. So I had to start learning. And as I started learning, when I started learning about the history of voter suppression against Black people, dating all the way back to Reconstruction, which, by the way, the 1619 Project also talks about in Nicole Hannah-Jones's book, it made me realize that this is the cycle. If our vote didn't matter, there wouldn't have been we wouldn't have a history of backlash against us, from Reconstruction, from, I don't know if anybody knows, there was a Civil Rights Act in 1870 called the Ku Klux Klan Act, because of the KKK going after Black voters, during that time frame. So there had to be a Civil Rights Act to reinforce the 15th Amendment. So that's three. We had Reconstruction, the 15th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act of 1870. Then we had to have the Civil Rights Act of 1965. And now we have to have the John Lewis Civil Rights. So all these things that we always have to have, because there's always backlash when we gain any little bit of political power. And that tells us how much our vote actually does count.
Exactly right. I couldn't have said it any better myself. That is what's so important. And that is why let's segue to your 1619 project, because I think it's a perfect segue. Until you learn all those pieces of history, and I'm learning, as my daughter reads the book and as I listen to you guys on Twitter Space, I'm learning the different aspects. You're telling me, when I get a chance to read the book, the more realistic thing is I'm unlikely to have a chance to read the book. But that said, learning from you guys, I think it's great, you know?
Yeah.
But why did you start that 1619 project space? Because there's a lot of backlash. Even on my show, I have all the conservatives that come to my show. They have all kinds of things against the 1619 project. Of course, I know that it's been made a caricature of by the right. Why did you start it?
I started it first as our group, Writers and Editors of Color, started it on Medium first, because it is a publication. It's called The Case for the 1619 Project. But I don't know what I was on I was on Google, and I think I Googled it, and I saw an article criticizing it. And so I went back to the group and I was like, oh my God, we need to write about this. She's getting criticized like horribly. And so everybody's like, oh yeah, we should do it. And nobody really paid much attention. But then the co-founders of the group came to me to ask me if I would manage it as a project and take it on, you know, and build the pub, which Allison built the pub, but, you know, getting people to contribute to the pub, you know, advertising it, the whole nine.
Pub is publication, folks. Just need to tell them. Everybody, not all people that are listening to this are the professional writers that you guys are. So sometimes we have to kind of.
Yes. Sorry. So we started the publication just to advocate for it, to support it, because we believed in it. We all, you know, read all of the articles that are on the project and on the New York Times online. And so we supported it that way. And we have different contributors contributing to it. We go through a peer review. Even I go through a peer review with the articles that I've contributed. You know, and we just really want to talk about the criticism, talk about our own personal stories. For me, it's very personal because it's not just part of my ancestral past. It's also part of my family history, because my great-great-grandfather was enslaved. So, you know, I soak up anything that I can get about history and about slavery. And so, as you know, I wanted to learn more, I gravitated towards the 1619 Project. Plus, I kept hearing a lot of good things about it. So as I learned more, I was like, wow, we really, really need to support it. So we did that. And then later found out that she came out with the book. And I was just like, oh my God, because I love reading in addition to, you know, loving to write. So I was like, oh my God, I can get even more of this, you know? So I just got really excited. And I was like, look, everybody, we need to start a book club and we need to do it immediately. Get the book. It's going to come out in, you know, November, blah, blah. So we just made it a whole project. Somebody else took on the responsibility of managing the Twitter account for the project. So we just ran with it, and it's been very successful.
Well, I mean, we're coming close to the end of the interview, so I want to ask you a favor. I didn't ask you to do this before, but I want you to tell my conservative listeners, why is it they need to disregard all the crap they're hearing about in the attempts to malign the 1619 Project, both the project at New York Times and the book, and why it is also in their interest to learn? Because, I mean, before you answer, I want to say something that I think about most people, right? I may be, you know, what's the word? Too altruistic, but I believe most people are good, everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest fear is that when America looks in the mirror and see what has occurred, given that most people, if going under the assumption that most people are good, they would suddenly see that there were not a people in the 1619 case, the case for Black people, but for many other people that were simply maligned in this country. And one of the things that I promote to my audience all of the times is that racism and all these other isms are tools for a few to control the entire body.
Right.
And if you break those chains, and I'm not talking about chains within if you break the chains within people's minds, suddenly the human within people start to come out.
Right.
And that's dangerous. Your thoughts?
Right. So the thing is, first of all, we all know that slavery happened. There's no doubts about that. But what people don't always want to know is how horrific it was, because they take it to mean that because their white ancestors enslaved my Black ancestors, that makes them racist too, or that makes them guilty. Nobody's saying that, Joe Smith is a racist, or, nobody's pointing individual fingers at individual people and saying you're to blame. That's not what this is about. But it's about telling accurate American history that so oftentimes leaves out the contributions of Black people to that history, to our democracy. We were enslaved when the Constitution was written, when the Declaration of Independence was written. Our humanity wasn't realized, and oftentimes still isn't realized. And so reading the 1619 Project really should not make anyone feel awful. What it really should do is just make you want to make this country better. And walking around with blinders on, thinking that it's good enough as it is it's unrealistic. And it's simply not true. It's just not true. This country constantly proclaims liberty and justice for all, but look at what it's done. Not just historically, what it's doing currently. The filibuster is still, keeping the John Lewis Voting Rights Act from being passed. And this is 2022. Slavery ended in 1865.
L.A. Justice, manager of the Woke Project, the 1619 Project. Thank you so kindly. Actually, before I say that, I want to say that one of my biggest finds, and this was thanks to Arturo Dominguez, was to have found Woke. Because I found in Woke, first of all, a warmth. Secondly, some damn smart people who don't only know history, but know a hell of a lot more. Right. And it just felt home. So I want to thank you guys for what you guys have created there, first of all. But secondly, thank you for all that you do. Again, LA Justice, look her up. Thank you for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Why is it that I am asking you to support KPFT 90.1 FM? It is extremely important. I mean, remember, KPFT embraces cultural diversity. So we represent the entire Houston. We represent the entire metropolitan area. We represent the entire country. KPFT, we support programming that's not the status quo. We challenge the status quo. We don't give you what the corporatocracy just wants to give you. We are here to tell you not only the truth, but to express it in a manner that we all understand. That's what KPFT does for you. we are not trying to forget the past. We embrace the past, and we are there to celebrate the future because things change. So what I'm saying, please remember, KPFT 90.1 FM is a gem. We are in the process of moving. We're in the process of relocating to a new space. We need you more than we ever needed you before to keep this thing going. Over 50 years of giving you great info, not only progressive data, not only progressive programming, but programming, alternative programming. And when I, sometimes you say alternative programming and people say, what do you mean by alternative programming? We mean things that you're not going to get elsewhere. We also mean telling you the truth about things that others may not want you to know. So please remember, folks, call 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. But preferably, so we get it automatically, go to kpft.org. kpft.org. Please remember to select the option that you want. Make sure you select Politics Done Right, and we have a whole lot of choices for you. Remember that you can get one of my several books out there. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, for a contribution of $120. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors for a contribution of $120. How to make America utopia. Take away the economy from those who rigged it. A pledge of $120. You can get any two of those books for $200. Any three of those books for $250. That is to support our station. Alternatively, folks, you can get a KPFT membership for $40, but also remember, just go to kpft.org and select an option, either our books or something else. Support the station. It is worth it. You can get Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/politicsdoneright, on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please do not forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My handle is at Egberto Willies, at EGBERTO That's it, folks. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view.